So I have two patrons by the name of Thomas Jones. This is who I like to refer to as Thomas Jones number 2, because he was the second to join my patrons. He has requested that I review the 1993 film Fire in the Sky, a film that I saw, I think, probably in 1996. I think it came on television around 1996. I was up late one night and I watched it. So for anyone who knows me, you'll know that I'm a huge X-Files fan. X-Files is probably my number 1 rated show of all time. When I first saw Fire in the Sky, I was knee-deep in my X-Files fandom. And I watched it, and this is in the days before IMDb, in the days before Letterboxd. You couldn't just go on your phone and quickly fact check something. You really had to go out of your way to find certain information about movies. So when this came on TV, I was like, oh my word, what an X-Files rip-off. A very good X-Files rip-off, don't get me wrong, because we'll get into that in just a moment. But at the time, I was like, okay, as far as X-Files rip-offs go, that was pretty decent. I would find out much later that this film was actually made in 1993, which of course is the year that the X-Files aired. So this couldn't have been an X-Files rip-off, because to come up with a script and then film it and then get it out in the same year that the TV show was released, and I think the release is like September anyway, so it's not an X-Files ripoff, it's just seriously coincidental timing. I say that just to say that I think that was probably the opinion of many people who came to this film and maybe even dismissed it, because I think nobody noticed this really when it came out, and I think it's only after the success of the X-Files that people kind of maybe latched onto it. So it is unfair, I think. Now, this film is clearly shot in Vancouver. It uses a lot of Vancouver talent, many of which would go on to be on the X-Files, not least of which Robert Patrick, who would go on to take one of the main roles. But I think it's safe to say that at this point in their careers, most of the actors in this were not movie stars. They were not headliners. D.B. Sweeney I had seen in Memphis Belle, which was kind of like an ensemble piece anyway. James Garner obviously was a known name amongst a certain age demographic. But yeah, these were not your big stars. Robert Patrick was probably the biggest star in this, I would say, at the time, simply by virtue of having been in Terminator 2. He played a monosyllabic character in that. Very underrated performance, though. I think physically he does a lot in that film that is just absolutely brilliant as an actor. Why do I point that out? Well, because I would say that the biggest thing this film has going against it is that it feels like a made-for-TV movie. It feels like, one of those 2-part Stephen King adaptations that were kind of rife in the 90s, that would usually end badly because they just fizzle out. That's not the case here with regards to the ending, before someone jumps the gun. But it has that feel of a made-for-TV movie. Not helped by the fact that it is shot in Vancouver, and like most of your 90s American television was shot in Vancouver due to tax breaks and various other reasons. So whenever I see a movie that is shot in Vancouver, it always it feels like a budgetary constraint to me. Like, we've only got so much budget, it's not big, it's not Hollywood numbers, let's go to Vancouver. Now, the story is based on a true story. Okay, so we've got to take that with a pinch of salt, because at the end of the day, this is a film about somebody being abducted by aliens. You may believe in aliens, and in which case you'd be all over this and use it as a totem pole of truth and highlighting what's going on. But I don't know if I believe in aliens or not. So far, not enough to convince me. But either way, you know, whatever. Look, so this is based on the testimony, the story, the book by who is the kind of the central figure in this film, played by D.B. Sweeney. He's a logger. He works with a team of other loggers, including his best friend, played by Robert Patrick. And they're coming home from a job late one night when they see a fire in the sky. And they get closer to it. Sweeney's character gets out and they see a UFO. And then Sweeney's character, goes through stuff. The film plays, like, the first 2/3 of it is really like this look at a town kind of falling apart as they start to believe that one of them has been killed. You know, this guy has gone missing. He's been abducted by aliens, according to the film, and according to the people telling the story, the other 4 men that were part of that team. And it's, can we trust them? That's the question. Can we trust them, or have they done away with this guy, buried him out in the woods somewhere, and concocted this story? If this was a movie where, and obviously it's based on people's actual accounts, so they have to bring him back. But if Sweeney's character didn't return in the last act of the film, it would be one of those films that would leave a lasting impression of, okay, did they do it or didn't they? The fact that Sweeney's character is returned, 5 days later after he's supposedly abducted, he's tested by doctors who say, he's not had anything to eat or drink for the whole time he's been away. So it's like it's a lot to go to orchestrate a hoax. And for me, the film leans in, I think, to believing these guys. I think you come away from it having more sympathy for these guys and kind of believing their story, because there's certain things they show you where, okay, we wouldn't see that if what they were saying wasn't true. I think there could have been a bit more ambiguity there. The detective character who's brought into the case to help, played by James Garner, he comes across as a really sensible guy. He's not like your douchebag sheriff that you get in a lot of shows where you make them such a douchebag that you have no choice but to believe the people that he's investigating. He comes across as genuine. He comes across as someone who's just like, okay, he's skeptical, and quite rightly so. I feel like anybody would be. And it's his job to get to the truth. And he suspects that, this is a concoction. He just can't quite work out why they would go to such lengths to concoct this story. That's about all we get, really, in regards to whether or not this was manufactured. So it doesn't leave enough ambiguity for me. Now, having said that's kind of my negatives. Everything else in this film really works quite well. As I say, before Sweeney's character is returned, it does a very good job with these characters of, like, showing us enough of each of them for each of them to be a fully rounded person. So you have the douchebag character played by Craig Sheffer, who, recently talked about when we did our 31 on 31. He was in Hellraiser Inferno, another classic right there. But no, while I still wouldn't rate Sheffer as an amazing actor, I certainly think he does better here than he did there. But again, he's playing the douchebag. It makes me wonder if, it's typecast for a reason. I don't know, but no, there are, because of the script, there are certain nuances where at first you think this guy's just a douchebag, and then as you go on, you kind of feel like, maybe this guy ain't such a douche. Maybe he's made some bad choices in life, and because of that, he's done time. And then because of that, he feels pigeonholed and struggles to kind of find a way to be accepted. And while that's never out and out stated, there are certain things that are done within the script just to highlight that. Like when they're taking a lie detector test and he's asked, do you like the Sweeney character? Because there's a thing in the film about how the two of them are like constantly going at each other, like they don't like each other, and they're always arguing, and it kind of makes this guy, and especially given the fact that he's already got a criminal record, it makes him the most likely suspect to have done something that the other guys are then having to cover up. And he's asked, did you like him? And he says yes. So he says no, and yes, or yes and no. One of it's like this double-edged kind of sword, where it's like, at first it's like, yeah, he kind of confirms what we suspect, which is that he doesn't like him, but actually he kind of does, which kind of tells us that all of this stuff he does it's just bravado. It's not that he genuinely has a dislike for these people. He's created this kind of defensive shell for himself. Now, that might be me reading way too much into it, but I feel there's a few other little bits in there that kind of lead to that. Like there's a conversation they have later, well, actually before that, when they're talking about having the lie detector test in the first place, and he spells out why he doesn't want to do it, which is that, he is the obvious man that the police would be going for. Why would he put himself in the firing line for people who clearly want to see him getting taken down? It's not that this guy is genuinely guilty. He's got a genuine reason to think that people would be against him. So it's little moments like that kind of humanise him as you go. And so like I say, you start out thinking this guy's just a total douchebag, stock character, and then there's a few moments where it humanises him enough to make you think, you know what, these guys are going through something that is quite difficult. And if that is your story, and if that is the truth, how do you stick to that? It's sometimes it's harder to speak out the truth than it is to concoct something. Like the thing that they're speaking out sounds like something that's been concocted, but if it's the truth, then to speak it out and appear like you've concocted it is, you know what I mean? That's the difficulty there that all these guys having to go through. And yeah, seeing them struggle with that, seeing like them struggle with their families and whether or not their families believe them, particularly the Robert Patrick character. He's got 2 kids and a wife, and I'd say that the wife character in this, his wife, doesn't come off too well. She's not exactly very supporting of him, but again, I'm not going to make a judgment on the real life character that's based on, because in the film we're clearly meant to believe these guys, I think, personally, whereas in real life, I've not done my research into the actual story, but I guarantee it won't be as clean cut as the way this film makes it out to be, and that's not it's not a criticism of the film so much. You have to do that when you're taking a real life story. To an extent, you have to change certain things, do certain things to make us have central characters that we can root for, and this, that, and the other. Now, you put something like that in the hands of, say, someone like David Fincher, an absolute master. He can take characters that actually none of us really want to identify with, and yet somehow make us kind of key into whatever darkness they have and just go along with it. You might feel a bit dirty by the time you get to the end of it, but the film that he'll make, it'll be really gripping. We're not dealing with Fincher here. We're not dealing with someone of that level. We rely on a lot of like kind of typical kind of Hollywoody type tropes in order to get us to identify with the characters that are going along with that. I'm fine with that. That's okay. That's fine. They're telling a story at the end of the day. But yeah, I do think there is room there to have not been so intent on making us believe these guys. So in the last 20 minutes of the film, we get to see what Sweeney's character has supposedly been through. Obviously this will be what he said he's gone through, but we see it as a flashback. So we see it, in the moment as it happens. And I remember back when I first saw this, it actually creeped the crap out of me. You know, the idea that these little grey something or others, I nearly swore then. So these little hits, kind of, yeah, they're creepy. They're creepy, and the effects work on them is very good, I would say. You know, again, does it have a little bit of a TV feel to it? Maybe, but they've dated pretty well. You look at the physical effects work on the aliens here. It's dated really well. Like these days, you know, a big Hollywood studio would do this scene with a lot of CGI, and I don't think it would hold up as well. I really don't. Everything we see here, it's all physical. You know, we have this moment when Sweeney wakes up, and he comes out of this pod, this horrible looking pod that he's been put in, and as he comes out of it, he realizes he's in zero gravity, and he starts floating around and stuff. And so, like I say, it's all physical stuff. They've literally got the actor kind of floating around, and we see these aliens that, you know, are physical costumes. The expressions on their faces are very well done. So the animatronics on that are very well done. They're this may sound weird to say, but they do a very good job of humanizing them, of letting their characters come through their faces. And they've not just used the same alien suit for all, I think we see three or four aliens, and they don't just like use the same mold for each of them. They've clearly done different molds for them to give each one their distinct characters. Like there's one in there that looks a bit older, a bit more kind of German Nazi scientist type. But it just, yeah, they've got a lot of expression on their faces. Yeah, it's good work. It's really good work. But that whole sequence, again, it's not quite as shocking or scary as it was back when I watched it when I was like 16. But then I hadn't seen a right lot like this before back then. You know, other than the X-Files, very good cinematography as well. There's a lot of real deep focus pulling in it where you get to see the atmosphere around him. So, you know, like as he's floating around in this spaceship, and he'll see something else floating in the air, and we have this deep focus pull through the air, and we see all the dust particles, and it's very effective. It's really not, it's beautiful and horrific all at the same time. Like it's just, yeah, really great job on the visuals with that side of things. Like I said, when we're down on Earth, it does have a bit of a TV vibe about it. I don't think that's because of the direction or the cinematography or anything like that. I think it's just virtue of the fact that we're clearly in Vancouver. Once we get in the spaceship, it becomes, to me, a bit more cinematic. It's a very good film. I really liked Fire and Sky. As I say, a bit more ambiguity would have been nice. But as far as character development, as far as making us root for these people and feel for them, sympathise with their plight, with the situation they're in, coming through it and feeling like you want these guys to be believed, to be vindicated, you want this man to be found. I would say any weakness in the film comes by virtue of the man being found at the end. In the final act, but that's not to say that the final act isn't still entertaining, and there's still some really good character work there, because you got one of these. So the Patrick character, you know, like when his best friend was taken, at first he did a runner. Him and the rest of the boys, they did a runner, but he went back, and when he went back, Sweeney's character was gone. So that kind of creates this rift between them. The knowledge that he left him there, but that makes for a really nice moment towards the end of the film, which kind of, yeah, it's a redemptive moment, a moment about forgiveness, and it kind of plays into the fact that this is really a character-driven film, as much as it's an alien abduction film and it's about this guy getting taken by aliens. It's also a character-driven piece about the relationship of these 5 men, and their ability to hold to their story in the face of everyone telling them that essentially that they're liars. So yeah, very good. If you haven't seen it, do highly recommend it. If you have seen it, I think Thomas would like to know what you think about it, and so would I. So please leave your comments on the film down in the comments section below. Thank you, Thomas, for asking for me to review this film, and thank you for being a patron. Yeah, this is a film I've kind of wanted to revisit for some time, and you've given me the reason to do so. If you would like to become a patron, if you'd like to know a bit more about what that is, then do hit the link down in the description for my Patreon page, and maybe have a think about becoming a Patreon or a patron yourself. Yeah, thank you for watching this video, and until next time, crack it.